Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about that insane finish today at Richmond Raceway. Heck of a race, just when I thought William Byron in the 24 car had this race won. I thought he was going to be the first repeat winner of the season. Denny Hamlin said, oh no, he went by and slid right by him with much fresher tires at the end of this race. A great strategic call by the 11 team, a great strategic call by really all the Toyotas. They all had a good call there at the end of the race and were able to go right by your leader at the time, William Byron. Denny Hamlin, I believe, was, 8 seconds behind at one point in this race? Or 8 seconds behind William Byron with like 18 laps to go and was able to pass him with 4 laps to go. Absolutely insane what those fresher tires can do. The call that William Byron made it wasn't a bad call for that situation because they essentially weren't the fastest car on the racetrack. They probably weren't going to get the win unless they tried to pit one less time. They did that. It almost worked out. They would have worked out if the race was 345 laps instead of 400. But ultimately, Denny Hamlin did go past the 24 car with 4 laps to go. Great move by Denny Hamlin and his entire team. A great move by Truex as well. Just didn't quite work out at the end of this race. Let's go through the top 10 today in Richmond. Just kind of talk about how their day went. I think that would be a better way to kind of go through this race. Denny Hamlin, like I said, the winner of the race, went by William Byron right at the end, but this is a big win for the number 11 team of Denny Hamlin. Huge win for this organization. They've been talking all year. They need just one little boost of something, and the whole Toyotas, the whole entire Joe Gibbs organization, the entire Toyota organization has been behind all year. That's been one of the top stories of the season so far this year, is that the Toyotas just don't have the speed. Well, they said today they interviewed Truex this morning, they interviewed Hamlin this morning, they interviewed a lot of the Toyota drivers this morning and said, we're changing how we're approaching these races completely. We've got a whole new setup going into this Richmond race, and it definitely showed. I think the Toyotas have finally found something. They were fast all day, and it shows it. With Denny Hamlin winning today, a huge win for Toyota, kind of showing that, hey, we can run with these Hendrick Chevrolets, and we can run with these Trackhouse Racing teams as well. So great move for Toyota and Joe Gibbs showing their win. It's also a big win for Denny Hamlin at his home racetrack in Richmond Raceway, Richmond, Virginia. Denny Hamlin grew up, 30 miles from that track, so not far at all. I think Hamlin said he went to this racetrack a lot as a kid, so a great win for Denny Hamlin to get that win earlier on in the season than he did last year as well. So a big win for the 11 team, and they are now back to where they want to be, back to winning, and that's what this 11 team wants. Kevin Harvick ended up finishing second today on that same strategy that Denny Hamlin was using. Wasn't quite able to pull it off like Denny Hamlin was, unfortunately for Kevin Harvick, but still a great run for Kevin Harvick. In his post-race interview, he even said, to get a second-place finish the way we run last year, the way we run the beginning of this year, we'll take second place all day, kind of build off of that momentum and try to work on that, try to get back to a winning race car, winning race team organization. For the number 4, Kevin Harvick. Hasn't been terrible all year for Kevin Harvick, but definitely hasn't been leading the laps that he wants to be doing. If you go back to 2020, 2019 and stuff, he was winning races week in and week out, and it was very common to see him in victory lane. Not so much the last 2 years, so certainly a top 2 is really good for Kevin Harvick. Hopefully he can build off of that, maybe start winning some races in the future and in the next couple weeks or so, especially when we go to some more short tracks like we will next week at Martinsville. William Byron in third place. I mentioned him, tried a different strategy, was able to kind of risk it, could have potentially lose even more than 3 spots with the strategy they used, but did not. Once again, they already have a win at Atlanta. They're locked in the playoffs most likely, so they decided to kind of gamble with the 24 car and take one less pit stop. It didn't work out for the win. Like I said, it almost worked out for the win. They almost were able to take that win away from the Toyotas, but just couldn't quite pull it off. Like I said, if they had another, if you took off 2-3 laps or 3 to 4 laps of this race, William Byron would be the winner, and we'd be talking about that instead, but that's not quite how it played out. You have to run these races all the way to the end, and with 40 fresher lap tires, William Byron had no chance of holding off those guys. He didn't even really try. You couldn't have tried. They were, by the time you got back on the front straightaway, they were already half a lap ahead of you. So just a huge, a pretty bad loss for William Byron, but it was worth a good shot, a good strategy call, and it ended up working out for him. They definitely weren't top 3 car all day, so to finish third is definitely a good run for the 24 team. Martin Truex Jr. Ended up finishing 4th today. That's disappointing for him. Like I said, he had 30 lap fresher tires than William Byron, but he did have 10 laps less tires than Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. Therefore, even just the 10 laps at a track like this that uses so much braking and that tire wear is so key, Denny Hamlin and Harvick were able to fly past Martin Truex Jr. as well there at the end of the race. And it really is difficult for Truex to see that. You hate to lose a race as a driver and as a team. I'm sure it's a hard pill to swallow for Martin Truex that he did lose this race. Easily the fastest car all day. At first it seemed like it was Blaney that was really fast, but once things kind of cycled out, we got to the second half of the race, we got to the third stage of the race. Yeah, we were kind of figuring out this is Martin Truex Jr.'s race to win or lose, and unfortunately he did not make the perfect strategy call like Denny Hamlin and Harvick did, and ended up finishing fourth. But that's okay. Once again, you have to kind of build off of that with this next-gen race car. You know you have the speed. You know those Toyotas have the speed. These cars have the speed. Your team has speed now with the new adjustments they made going into this week, and that's definitely something, and the pit road adjustments they made this week too, which is definitely something to build off of if you're Martin Truex Jr. Kyle Larson having a pretty good day, was running in the top 10 for most of the day and evening, was able to sneak up in the top 5 right there at the end. He was actually, I believe he was fourth there coming to the finish, and then when Denny Hamlin was on his little rampage, making up 8 seconds in 10 laps, just went right through Kyle Larson, putting him back in 5th. So, yeah, Hamlin was fast today. Let's just get the Hamlin was really fast at the end of this race with those fresher tires. So Kyle Larson ended up getting 5th today, which is a pretty good finish for him considering the last few weeks haven't been great. A lot of DNFs over the last few weeks. So take that 5th place finish, a pretty good momentum boost for the 5 team. I know they're expected to win. They're expected to be in victory lane because they're your defending champs. They got 10 wins last year plus the All-Star race. But take a 5th place finish today. Try to build off of that. Take the points, and of course use that and try to build off of that going into some more short tracks upcoming. Christopher Bell ended up finishing 6th today. A pretty decent run for him. He was running up front with some strategic moves as well. Was able to finish 6th. 7th, Ryan Blaney. Like I said, Blaney was one of those drivers who seemed extremely fast at the beginning of this race, and then things kind of started to fade. We tend to see this with Blaney. Blaney tends to be the fastest race car at the beginning of these races, and then he tends to fade as the race goes on. He sat on pole today, was able to dominate the first stage of the race, led every lap of the first stage, led almost every lap of the second stage, and then once we got into the third stage, we kind of figured out Martin Truex Jr. was just a lot faster than he was, and Blaney was fading back. Blaney ended up getting into some heated issues with Ross Chastain. They were running into each other a few times. Blaney running into Chastain, Chastain running into Blaney. There might be a conversation after this week, I don't know, but definitely Blaney and Chastain aren't that happy right now. Alex Bowman finished 8th today, a pretty decent run for Alex Bowman, finishing 8th, and then Kyle Busch, who ended up finishing 9th. And I actually have a few things to say about Kyle Busch. First off, I want to talk about how I'm a bit disappointed and upset with NASCAR, because I'm a Kyle Busch fan, so obviously I want Kyle Busch to do good, right? But with these next-gen cars and the way that the airflow goes through underneath the race car and stuff like that, there is a rule where you cannot put tape over the grill of the race car. That's something completely new. NASCAR has always put tape over the grill, even if you go back to the golden days. I mean, that was one of the big things about NASCAR. You put tape on the grill, right? You cannot do that starting in 2022 with the next-gen car. It is a rule. You will have to go down pit road and take that tape off. It's a complete violation if you put tape on the grill. Well, Kyle Busch's crew accidentally, I don't know if it was actually accidentally or not, but the crew chief said it was an accident. They accidentally put tape on the wrong spot of the car. They put it on the grill, on the front of the grill. I don't really think that would be much of an advantage, especially an aero advantage. I mean, at a track like maybe Daytona or Talladega, maybe, or a bigger racetrack like Michigan, maybe that could be an advantage, but at a track like Richmond, I don't see where putting tape over the grill was an advantage, but they did put it over the grill, therefore it resulted in a penalty. But that's not why I'm upset with the call by NASCAR. It's not that they called the penalty, it's how late they called the penalty. This happened in the first 200 laps of the race. This happened in the first half of the race on one of those pit stops, probably about stage 2. This occurred, and NASCAR didn't catch it until the end of the race, and that's when they decided to penalize the 18 team. That's way too late. NASCAR has to make these calls way earlier. They have to keep an eye on that stuff, and they've gotten way better at making the calls. I have noticed that over the last few years, but that's definitely today was a missed call and very upsetting. That could have essentially made Kyle Busch's day way worse. I mean, he was able to come back up and finish 9th, which was good for him with the fresher tires that he got when he went down pit road, but that could have been disastrous for Kyle Busch. Especially if it was at another racetrack. So definitely wish NASCAR was a little bit quicker on that. I did mention that Toyota has been trying all new stuff, and it definitely paid out. They kind of re-scripted their notebooks. They did everything new going into this week. They said that, and it definitely paid off. They had faster race cars, but they also had faster pit stops where they were lining up everybody on pit road, all four tire carriers, the tire changers, and the jack man, and they were all jumping over the wall just a little bit sooner, which is something we didn't see with the other teams. Every other team will probably be doing it next week, but it was interesting that they were trying that because they actually had the fastest pit stop in NASCAR history. The fastest four-tire pit stop change was Kyle Busch's team at 9.19 seconds. That's a pretty interesting stat. So today at Richmond, 2022 in the spring, NASCAR, Kyle Busch's team had the fastest ever four-tire pit stop in the history of NASCAR. So that is certainly an interesting stat to look at as well. So 10th place, Austin Dillon was able to sneak up there and get a top 10 finish today at Richmond. So like I said, a pretty great Richmond race finish. It wasn't the most entertaining race in the middle of the race. It definitely wasn't boring. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but not a whole lot of excitement during the race, especially battling for the lead and such. But overall, still a fantastic finish. I think the next-gen car has been extremely exciting all year. I don't think it's been disappointing yet. But we do go to our next short track next week, Saturday night, under the lights at Martinsville for the first Martinsville night race with full capacity stands. And I am happy to say that I will be there, and I'm really looking forward to it. Looked at the forecast. Looks like it's going to be a little bit cold. Hopefully it warms up a little bit. Hopefully there's no rain, no weather, anything like that. And I enjoy the weekend next week. But yeah, definitely excited for another short track race. And then after that, we go to Bristol. We go to the Bristol Dirt Race. So we got a little short track swing here with all our short tracks kind of close together on the schedule. So definitely excited for it. Going into Martinsville, I think you want to watch the same guys that you saw run good today. Certainly, I think you want to watch Kevin Harvick, who's running good at the short tracks today, but watch those Toyotas again going into Martinsville. Their short track package is obviously very fast. Even if you go back to the Clash at the Coliseum, you saw drivers like Kyle Busch run up front. So I would definitely watch drivers like Denny Hamlin next week in Martinsville, Martin Truex Jr. for sure. Definitely going to be a contender next week. And then I would even watch drivers like Kyle Busch and Christopher Bell. Those Toyotas are now showing that they do have speed, especially even if they don't have the speed at the bigger tracks, at the short tracks, they definitely have the speed. So watch that going into Martinsville next week. That's it. That's all there is to talk about. And once again, I'm tired of saying this, Kyle Busch not having the best day. And about that penalty at the end for Kyle, let's get rowdy.